Historically, parents have done what they genuinely believed was best. You consider their point of view, you listen to them. That child is treated as a person.
I said just enjoy the one you're in, because for every season there's always something that's going to come with it.
You said you're punishing a behavior and not a person.
In the way it reduces problem behavior, that's why people think it works. However, it doesn't teach replacement behavior.
You are listening to Two Bees in a Pod, and I am Bilola.
And I am Bilionga, and this is a podcast about immigrant experiences in the United States, sharing our perspectives on various topics,
including straddling cultures, fitting in, staying connected, learning and unlearning the good, the bad, and the ugly. So today we have our very first guest, Coach Gbemi. I will let her introduce herself, but I'm going to try not to fangirl too hard because I've been following Gbemi for a few years on Twitter now. And as a parent, like, her Twitter feed is gold for me as the type of parent that I would like to be, channeling, sharing the successes, sharing the lows also, and just being very upfront and honest about, raising kids and being intentional with the way she's raising her kids. So
thank you so much, ladies, for having me. And it is an honor to be here. I feel like I'm in good company and I'm like with my people. And I love that a lot. Right. So my name is Gbemi. I'm a girl who prioritizes enjoyment. I like having a good time. My middle name literally translates to enjoyment. My grandfather named me that, and he must have been onto something because look, if I'm working, parenting, whatever I'm doing, I'm making sure that there's some kind of like enjoyment that's weaved into it, right? About me, I have 3 children, Nathan, Alexis, and David. They are the absolute delight and stressors of my life. Simultaneously, they bring the most joy and they bring the most tension. How they manage to do that in equal proportions is phenomenal, is worth being studied, but they piss me off as much as they make me happy, right? I also have a husband, great guy. I'm glad that we're parenting together because look, I know that we lean into each other's strengths like a lot. And I know I often speak in first person a lot, but I don't do this parenting work alone. I'm just used to centering myself and decentering men in general. So that's kind of like why it might come across like that, but I don't do this, by myself. For work, I'm a psychotherapist. I'm dually licensed as a licensed professional counselor and licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Texas. I'm also a nationally certified counselor, and I'm board certified in applied behavioral analysis. I have a bachelor's degree in behavioral science and a master's in clinical mental health counseling, which is where the expertise for doing this work that I do, which is very simply collaborating with determined people to help them be the best version of themselves possible. My practice is called Untangle Together, and it just simply means what it means, collaborating with you to untangle life's webs, mazes, and complications as life tends to get. That's it.
I love that. And I'm curious because I was looking at your website, untangledtogether.com. Is your practice entirely virtual, or do you see patients or clients in person in Texas?
It's mostly virtual because a lot of my clients don't even live in Texas, because in addition to therapy, I provide a coaching service. So for clients who live outside of Texas, because of licensure limits, I have a very thriving coaching practice where I see people who live outside of Texas. Texas doesn't preclude therapists from working with clients outside of the state. You are, however, required to be aware of the laws guiding therapy where your client is located. And a lot of my clients are in Nigeria, South Africa, and the UK. So I don't want to be diagnosing, treating, and preventing disorders where the law might prohibit it. So I have another service called coaching, which is just subclinical, everything except the clinical component of the work. So because a lot of my work is coaching, work, a lot of my work has to be virtual. But I, however, have Texas clients, which includes in-person work.
Nice. Okay, we're going to ask you some more questions about your work and how you got into it, but we always start this show with an icebreaker. And today, well, I think we haven't even told the audience what our topic is. Our topic today is cultural crossroads, raising children. And that's why Gbemi, or Coach G, right, as I guess your clients call you, that's why she's
My
here
clients
to
like
offer.
to call me that, and it just stopped.
Oh, so you're not the one who told them. They were just like, I cannot pronounce his name. I'm going to say Coach G.
It wasn't even from pronouncing. I don't know if it's like a cultural kind of like respect thing. But when I was in grad school, the only service I offered was coaching. Right? Because, like I said, my bachelor's is in behavioral science. And so I'm a behavior modification specialist. So a lot of my work was around behavior, which of course, as you can imagine, parents found helpful. So a lot of my work started around coaching. And my practice at the time was called Behavior Coach G.
Oh,
so I think everybody just, and then clients just used to call me that. And even after I became a therapist, now everybody calls me Coach G. And I quite like it. It's like a psychotherapist. G sounds a little clinical.
Okay, our icebreaker for this episode is the question: what cherished childhood memory would you want to recreate for, in your case, your children, right? You and Bilala, I don't have children, but nieces, nephews, children in your lives, etc. What cherished childhood memory would you want to recreate for them?
Oh, now I'm going to have to think about that and think about that really quickly. Cherished childhood memory I would like to recreate. Oh, why isn't anything coming to my brain right now?
Let me give you one, right? Okay,
go for it.
Go.
And then I'll steal yours.
So for me, I would say it revolves around anything around my grandmother, spending holidays at my grandmother's, long holidays or Christmas holidays with my grandmother, all my cousins. That is like cherished childhood memories that I wish that I could recreate for my child. Unfortunately, let me call out my siblings. I'm the only one with a child. So there would be no cousins at the grandparents' house on my side of the family.
Not even second cousins, like children of cousins. What about those?
Okay, yes, but I really just wanted to call out my siblings that if we had to recreate it as it was at my grandmother's house, it would not be the same thing.
We don't have enough characters for the play.
Exactly.
Okay. So now one's coming to mind, and it will be driving to school, and we will kneel and be like facing the rear, right? Because we didn't have to wear seatbelts back then, right? So we will be driving to school, and we will be in the back seat, and we would all be kneeling instead of sitting. So we'll be looking at the cars that are coming behind us and be counting the ones we sped past. Right? So kind of like, faster. Oh no, -1. Faster. Oh yes. And I mean, I can't imagine possibly replicating that, because there's no way we're breaking like traffic laws and not putting seatbelts. But it's just remarkable how incredibly dangerous and irresponsible a lot of the things that we used to do back then were. But we were fine, like no seatbelts, 2 people sitting in the front seat because none of you could decide who was riding shotgun. And they were just like, okay, both of you sit there, right? And nobody was wearing the seatbelt. And we could easily have been thrown out of the window if there was an accident, but nobody cared about things like that.
They still don't in Cameroon, I'll tell you that much. When we were growing up, at one point, my dad had a pickup truck, and we would ride in the back of the pickup to and from school.
But so you would find that in Nigeria too still, right? But I mean, even if I try to get my kids to do that now, they wouldn't even agree. Like they'll be like, wait, what? No, so their normal is very different. But it'd be nice. Maybe when we go to Nigeria, we can try that and have everybody just, be wild. Yeah. Now everybody just sits like respectable people, and they put their seatbelts on in the back. My oldest is kind of like, it's quite law abiding. I wonder where he gets that from. Wow. Definitely not from you.
My daughter doesn't like putting on her seatbelt.
Oh.
And that's how I know she's Cameroonian at heart, because I've never seen somebody that committed to breaking the law. She took herself out of her car seats, essentially. She was bigger, and so like it got a little bit tight. And so she
Mm-hmm.
started using a booster earlier than most. And after a while, she decided, I think she was like right there, but she was not like all the way where
Mm-hmm.
she could. I'm not even sure. She could probably still use it, but she's taller than most kids her age. But she took herself out of a booster many years ago.
Yeah,
She's
because
like,
I'm
I'm done
grown.
with this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
She
her
was just
already.
like, it's uncomfortable. And but so you have to like threaten her sometimes to put on her seatbelt. I I don't understand. She was born and raised here. So you would think it's like automatic to like get in a car and put on her
Mm-hmm.
seatbelt. No.
I'm already
That's
writing a
funny.
behavior intervention plan for you in my head.
I love it. I love it.
Because I'm already here, like, what's the function of the behavior? Escape and avoidance. Like, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, okay.
So my cherished childhood memory, when we were growing up, we had there was like a dirt road in front of our house, and when it would rain,
Mm-hmm.
it would form a little stream, and we
Mm-hmm.
would make these little paper boats,
Boats.
and we would sail them down the stream, and it was just so much fun, like playing in the rain, or even when it stopped raining and the stream was still there. And I feel like American kids have very structured or limited outdoor time
Mm-hmm.
just to be out, just
Right.
unsupervised, right? Which I get it. It's not always safe to do so, but yeah, I think that's one memory that I would want to create for my nieces and nephews because it was just so much fun and like very simple, like just childhood play.
I like the paper boats, but it's a traumatic memory for me.
Hey,
Okay.
Because in Form One, um, I did that. It was raining. We made paper boats and put it in the drain in front of the class. And I got
Mm-hmm.
in trouble. I got in trouble. Like I
Um,
got whipped because I guess when the rain was done, there were now papers in the
oh,
drain.
right.
He didn't even
oh,
call. He could have just told us to pick it up, but no.
right.
There was corporal punishment involved for absolute. I don't think I ever made a paper boat after that.
Look at that,
Oh
getting punished for
no.
playing, and look at how that just kills, you know.
Mm, dang.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we will talk about corporal punishment later on.
Mm-hmm. One of my
But
favorite things to discuss.
so we want to know, I mean, you've told us about a little bit about your practice, but how did you get into that? How did you decide to be, a therapist, get into coaching, your education? What was your inspiration?
Okay, fun fact, I used to be a tailor. I had a tailoring practice in Nigeria, and that was just the work that I did from after I graduated university, right? My mom was a tailor, but I swore I would never be a tailor because it just didn't seem like a prestigious like profession. And because I knew a little bit about it of all of my siblings, then she used to assign work to me, and I didn't like that very much. So I was like, never, because if I then became proficient, that would mean that I would have more tasks, right? So absolutely not. It was a thing. I can never be a tailor. It was a thing. And so after my mom passed away, the machines and stuff was still there lying around, but it wasn't like a profession or anything for any of us. But I knew a little bit about how to sew, and I had this unique problem where you're exposed to something that's good quality, but as a broke 20 something year old, I couldn't afford to pay for the type of like level of quality that my mom used to, give. And so the kind of tailors I could afford couldn't sew like her, but I knew that the clothes weren't fitting right because my mom used to like, really high level quality work. And so they will make things for me and I will just know that the clothes didn't fit right. And I will go home and try to fix it on my own, machine. So that kind of like began my exposure into sewing until it eventually became a profession, which I did like right out of university. And I did really well. I made my own wedding dress. I was making dresses for people. It was a really good business. At a point, I had like 6 staff and it was great. But then
Nice.
we moved, migrated to the US, and I genuinely thought that that was the same profession I was going to continue. In fact, fun fact, when we came here, I didn't like it, so I ran back to Nigeria. I don't say that part out loud often because now that there's a lot of people mass migrating, it just seems so selfish and like spoiled to be able to go back. I recognize that privilege, but I did run back. And then we came back. Right. At that time that we came back the second time, I was so sure that, okay, this would be my profession. So I bought like lots of fabric and like sewing materials. All of that is in the attic right now. And I thought that that was going to be my profession, right? But it didn't quite work out because sewing is very labor intensive. And then having like young children, I just didn't have the time and it didn't spark as much joy as it did back home because, of course, I had a whole team, right? But here it was just
Mhm.
me laboring away, cutting, sewing, all of that. I hated it. And so I then decided that, what, I was going to go to school. I just always genuinely believe that whatever your profession is, you just need to get better educated in that field. So even when I lived in Nigeria, I went to London College of Fashion, took some classes. I've always been that type of person. So I said, okay, I'm in fashion. What's fashion in Houston looking like? And Houston Community College had a fashion merchandising associate's degree. So I said, okay, let's go to college and go learn fashion in America, right? Per American like lifestyle since I'm here now. But then one day I was praying and this idea dropped in my mind. Like, if money wasn't an issue, like if I won the lottery today and I was in a profession, what would that profession be? And the answer was not sewing because I was sick of it already. I was already
Mhm.
thinking maybe I would, be in like maybe construction and, just whatever field of fashion, just not, a seamstress who's at the sewing machine because that wasn't my strength. And so the question then became, so if it's not fashion, then what would it be? I was like, well, I like helping people, like, listening to their problems, helping them solve their problems, that kind of thing. And that was where the answer came from. So what's the name of that profession? And I looked it up and I was like, oh, they're called therapists or counselors. And I Googled, how do you become a therapist? And I saw you need a psychology degree and a master's in, mental health. And I was like, okay, psychology degree. And I changed my major in Houston Community College to human services. It was at the time because being a 2-year college, they didn't have like psychology, but then I then transferred after I completed the associates in human services. And I thought I was going to do psychology, but then I changed my major to social work and I realized I didn't want to be a social worker. Then I found behavior science and the rest is history. That's basically
Talk about a pivot. A
right.
pivoting babe. I love it.
Thank you.
I absolutely love it.
So how long have you been, have you had your practice?
Oh, well, that doesn't have a very clear start date because, remember how I said that my bachelor's was in behavior science. And so I was doing a lot of parent training and behavior modification because the certification, how I said I'm board certified in applied behavior analysis. ABA
Mhm.
is the gold standard of intervention for autism spectrum disorder, right? It's the one that insurance covers and pays for. So that's the field that I was in. And while I was in school, learning behavioral science, because my minor was in applied behavior analysis, I then started to practice the things I was learning on my own children, right? And I was finding that, oh, positive reinforcement really is better than punishment. And so, because I'm somebody who likes to share a lot, soon enough, I was sharing with people what I was learning. It was working, and other people. So I technically started to like coach from, let's say, maybe like 2016, where people will literally pay me to say, look, I'm having problems with my kid. I remember a friend of mine, her brother lived or still lives in Nigeria and they were having like problems with their kid. And she said, look, I know this person. And then she called me and she said, I told my brother that it is $150 to work with you and he's going to call you and you better take that money and help them. I was like, why would you even say that? Like, you don't even know. And so that was kind of like it wasn't really like that I set up a practice and set up a business. It was just that I was helping people like
Mm.
informally. And then I would say I'm not a therapist. Behavior therapy is behavior modification. It's different from counseling therapies, but people will still say, I need your help. I need somebody to talk to. I need somebody who understands the American life and who understands the Nigerian life and the intersection and somebody who can help me because my kid is in America and these problems that I'm having, my Nigerian solutions or other African, solutions, because I do have clients who are not Nigerians, but the cultural context is very similar with, finding our cultural solutions for children who don't have that shared culture, in this very unique circumstance that we find ourselves as immigrants. So So I'll say no certain start date, but in the mid 2010s until I went into grad school. And then I realized that you can't use the word therapist casually. So I shut off the behavior therapist thing because you can't just call yourself a therapist if you're not licensed, right? And then all of that progressed to where we are now. So a decent number of years. Also, I was a crisis counselor on the National Suicide Prevention Line for a few years. And I started as a volunteer till I was eventually hired. This started in about 2012, 2013. So you can say that I have been counseling in the US for over a decade because I was a crisis counselor. That was my job description prior to even going to school and getting this degree. So I've worked in mental health in the US for well over 10 years, informally for a while after that, but then fully completed licensure. Believe it or not, it took me 11 years from starting to go to school to Houston Community College for undergrad to becoming fully licensed, 11, almost 12 years. That's how long the process takes in this country to become a therapist.
Wow. I had no idea it was that long.
Same.
Oh, bachelor's degree, which I didn't need another bachelor's degree, but I'm glad that I did that because my behavior science experience is fantastic. It's life-changing. And then grad school, 2 years. And then when you get your license in Texas, you're an associate. So I was a licensed professional counselor associate and licensed marriage and family therapist associate, where you get that license and you have to do 3,000 hours and 18 to 24 months of being supervised to getting your full license. So all of that journey from the very first day of undergrad in fall of 2012 to my license arriving in maybe like June or July or August of this year to, that's 11 solid years of
respect.
Of education, just trying to become a therapist. It's a lot. And for a field that is so underpaying and casually dismissed, it is ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, agreed. And how it's undervalued within the healthcare system, right? Itself, mental health as a whole. Yeah, that's truly ironic.
Right. But I'm glad I took that long, winding road to get here. I wouldn't have it any other way.
So you mentioned African or immigrant parents, right, trying to parent their children within a different cultural context, which your clients would be the US. I wanted to touch briefly on stereotypes of immigrant or how we were raised, right? Stereotypes of African parenting, which I find in other communities as well. Like when you watch skits, I spend a lot of time on social media, unfortunately, but you watch skits from Africans, Latino people, Asians, Caribbean people, and we seem to have these shared stereotypes of these parents who are very stern, emotionally unavailable is, I guess, the way I would describe it. For example, you'll hear Africans joking about how your parents don't apologize to you, but they'll come and ask, have you eaten? So those types of stereotypes. And then, of course, we talked about corporal punishment or beating as a form of correction, which, to be fair, I don't think that is limited to these communities that I've talked about. White Americans beat their children.
They do.
But we associate that with, for some reason, we associate it with Africans and these other, brown and Black communities. So is that something that you encounter in your practice? Like you were saying, right? These, immigrants who obviously were raised in a different context, and now you have children who are American children, or maybe they're British children, or in whatever completely different society. Do you find that people are trying to parent in the same style that they were raised, or is there really, I guess I should ask Bilola first because, she's a mother as well. So when you had your children, did you say, I'm going to do it differently? Or did you find that you were pushed to do it differently because you're in a different culture?
That's a really good question. Allow me to start answering it by saying that I think that the way we discuss parenting styles needs to change from a that style bad, this style good perspective to that style is different, right? Because historically, parents have done what they genuinely believed was best for their children. And this idea that we're suddenly so modern and we know everything, which now makes all of the historical practices bad, I think it's hurting us because we're throwing away some very, very helpful and useful tools, right? So you're never going to find me talking sideways about different cultures. What you're likely to hear is me pointing out what the pros and cons of what some practices might be, right? Because, for example, I talked about riding in the backseat of the car without a seatbelt. Did that make my parents bad, horrible parents for letting two of their children sit in the front seat, which is the way we will talk about their parenting? Say, what kind of parent does that? They were doing the best that they knew at the time, right? And with the best of intentions. And yes, we can discuss some of the unintended consequences of their choices, knowing that when our children's children are discussing us, they're going to be discussing us like that, as well. So I like an approach that is respectful of historical practices and is then able to say, here's a downside that we have found. And how are we going to mitigate, for those risks so that we can have a better outcome? That's the approach I like to use. So whether they're Caribbean or Nigerian or Cameroonian or Jamaican, or every culture has practices that they have used through the years. And we wouldn't be here if they weren't doing some things right. Yes, are there downsides? Absolutely. The style that we're using now, future research is going to show that it has downsides, and now we're going to be the bad guys. So then what? Right? So the unique struggle each parent has is taking what they learned, which is probably what they grew up with, and taking what's modern and crafting their own unique style that they genuinely believe is doing the best that they can, and being prepared that the next generation is going to think that they were terrible, but they will know that they did the best that they could at the time. So we're doing no harm, or at least doing as little harm as possible, right? Non-maleficence, or how do they say that big English word? And beneficence, doing the best that we can and finding that sweet spot. So if I find out today that something I have believed in for years is harmful, am I open to reviewing it? Am I open to considering that there might be some downsides to a certain style? And how am I going to make what I genuinely believe to be the best choice that honors the personhood of that child, while also holding them to very high standards? Because like I tell my children, you're either going to do the right thing or you're going to do the right thing. Those are the two options. What you get to choose is how we get there, the easy way or the hard way. But you see the right thing, we're getting there. So do you want to make it easy for me, or do you want to make it hard? If you choose the hard way, it's going to stress me out, but best believe it's going to stress you out too. So what's it going to be? High standards. We're just using a way that honors the personhood and does not do harm to the child or to us. Because at the end of the day, that's the person that we're raising, and they deserve to be honored, to be treated with dignity and respect, just like we do, regardless of how we were raised. That's my approach.
Ooh, I feel like I just heard a gospel. There are like so many, so many things that you touched on, because we recorded a prior episode and we talked about boarding school. So in Cameroon, going to boarding school is like a no-brainer. Once you get to the end of primary school, you go to boarding school. And I recently had a conversation with my father where he said, like, he knew my sister was having a hard time. She would cry every time she was going, and he felt bad. But he said in that moment, he felt the benefits outweighed her fear and what she was going through. But looking back from today, he's not sure if he would do it the same way. And which is what you said, like, as a parent, being able to admit and sit down and just have, go through the motions and think about, I know I made this choice at the time, but was it good? Was it harmful? And how would I change it? So Yeah, you said a lot of things that
Right. That mirrors my experience as a Nigerian growing up in Nigeria because I went to boarding school. All my siblings did too. And it was just what we did. It was just what was done. And we were 10 years old and, went to a completely different state and lived there with a bunch of strangers and adults who didn't care enough about us. Right. But that was our parents doing the best that they knew. Does it have downsides? Yes, as will our style today in a few years after it is reviewed. And so my children are not in boarding school. And are they going to say in a few years, will boarding schools become a thing in America? Because people are realizing that children need, maybe some new research to come up to say children need joint a shared peer age group, something that's beneficial for their education and well-being. Now we're shipping 15-year-olds to boarding school for high school or whatever. The research is going to change and culture evolves, right?
I suspect that teenagers really the one benefit of boarding school might be teenagers living together so they can deal with whatever they're dealing with. Because when I look at teenagers now, or in my case, I'm dealing with a preteen, but definitely like pubescent preteen. And every day I'm asking myself that I don't remember doing this. But I think I spent most of my puberty at school with people, with my peers, my age. So there wasn't anybody to lash out at. Like, who was I going to lash out? And I don't know. I just speculate that maybe that's the reason why we didn't get to lash out, because who were we going to lash out at? Our peers. They would have lashed out right back at us. So it would have been futile. So yeah.
The preteen years are tough for sure. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's a different cultural context as well, right? Like the conversations that you have with your daughter, because I'm sure, I don't know, maybe are they different? Even when you were at home with your parents, are you having kind of different conversations?
Similar conversations. To be very impartial to my parents, I'm not going to say which one. But one of my parents was very open about conversations, and they made it a point to be in our business, know what was going on with us, to the point where they wanted to know like who had a crush on who. And I think about it now. I think it was to be able to be relatable, have things where they were able to relate to us. And so I do it now where I joke that I love to know what is happening in school, like who has a crush on who. But it also helps to build connection. We talk about it and we laugh. And that way, if I'm trying to find like something is happening, usually I know the characters involved already. I can call them by name and build some kind of rapport. And so that, I would say, I definitely borrowed that aspect from growing up from the parent who did that for me, because I found that it was always very easy to talk to that parent because they're very open and they made it seem like they would listen to me.
Interesting. What about you, Gbemi? Do you think that your relationship with your children mirrors the one that you had with your parents, or is there a difference?
I think my relationship with my parents was significantly different from the relationship I have with my children now. In fact, my daughter says that I'm very whitewashed. And I got really curious about that because I was like, what does this mean? Like, I don't know how to interpret this. Is this a compliment? Is this a... And she was like, no, it just means that when people are talking about like African parents, that she can't really relate, that it's this whole therapy business that has messed with me. I was like, so because it was in a text that she was texting her friends, and it said, guys, look, my mom is whitewashed. And I was like, so I think that therapy has messed with my life in ways that I'm not able to, I guess I won't be able to fully come to terms with until maybe much later in the future, because my children were literally the ones that I practiced everything with. So I went from this yelling and screaming mom, which my mom was a yeller and screamer. And if you had a child like me, you couldn't possibly survive without yelling and screaming. So with all due respect to her, I don't know how she did it, but look, she tried, right? And I started out as a yelling and screaming mom, but then I became whitewashed, like my daughter has said, and we turned into, how does that make you feel? And one day, my son, a couple months ago, he said, look, we talk too much in this house, and I'm going to need us to do less of that. And I was like, what does that mean? And I was like, you're doing it.
He's like that. He's like, that's what I mean.
Exactly that. Like, I'm not trying to have a meeting about this. I just think that we do. But I was like, you have to talk about feelings. That is the way to. It was like, I get it. I'm just saying that it's the law. And can we not make it another? I was like, oh, okay. Now there's no context where I could have been talking to my parents like that.
Mm-hmm.
My dad and I were really cool. And he was the good cop, for my mom's like bad cop. But there's no context where I would have been like, we talk too much in this house. Less of that, please.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people of our generation, especially those who grew up in Africa, right? Or places like Cameroon and Nigeria, we can relate. Like, that's not something you would say to your parent. Even parents that you had good relationships with, there's very much an established hierarchy.
Right.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, even in this house, there's very clearly established hierarchy because I catch them, I watch them catch themselves when they overstep. So I know that we know who's in charge here, like who's the, so for example, the other day, my son is like, bruh. And I was like, he was like,
pardon?
He was like, I spoke out of turn. I promise. It's just something I say when I'm trying to spill the tea. And look, I sincerely apologize. And I said, what are you apologizing for? He was like, you're trying to play it cool, but look, yeah. And I was like, exactly, because I checked him with my eyes because I'm like, so there's that. So they get it. But the fact that the way it comes out, when they slip up, the way it presents, the way they check themselves without fear of getting harmed just because they slipped up, I think even that is part of the difference, because home to me is supposed to be the safest place where you can make all the mistakes, and you should make all the mistakes that you should be making, because it's where you get practice. So I don't consider missteps, or I don't take missteps personal. I take it as this is your safe space. This is the place where you're supposed to be at your most relaxed. So you will slip up, and it's my job to check you, right? And so I'm like, wait, what? And they're like, they redirect, right? That wasn't the same thing growing up, because the idea was that shouldn't even have happened in the first place. So now you're disrespectful. Now you disrespected an adult. Now you need the consequences, and there must be tears. The vibe is different. So it's hard to compare, really, because I really want home to be like the most relaxed and most fun place for them, in a way that makes me intentionally set it up to be like, so, which means that your mistakes aren't treated as like this horrible, awful thing that happened. Your mistakes are treated as like, okay, when did that become a thing here? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't the way I intended for it to come out.
That raises a point, because something that I always say, I don't know if I practice it, is gentle parenting is not permissive parenting, right?
Look, you just talked about the topic. How much time do we have? Right. Yeah, parenting styles. I recently recorded a video about that, which I shared in my virtual village, where I'm trying to make sure I put resources for free and make it available to as many people as possible, because what we know is what we know, and what we don't know, we don't know. And what we don't know can be limiting our lives. So if there's an opportunity to learn it, then we can. And I'm really good at explaining the complex behavior science and emotional and mental health. So I'm making it my duty to do like short explainer videos on as many topics as possible, and then just drop a new one each week so that we can learn. So one of the first ones I did was on parenting styles, and the parenting style is just generally your approach to parenting, right? It's not really a set of behaviors. It's a general, approach. And it's not my research. It's not my science that I developed. These fantastic scientists developed it. We're just sharing that information. And there are 4 different kind of styles right? And there's the authoritarian, which is the more predominantly African style where you're really high on expectation and demandingness, what the researchers call demandingness, right? Which is how you expect the child to behave and your level of control, right? So high on demandingness, the authoritarian style is low on connection and attunement. So strict rules, you don't explain yourself, you're the boss. Authoritarian, the child knows their place, they don't have a say, they don't even have a voice, right? So that style is the typical and very prevalent, like strict style, which is, a style has been for generations. However, one downside is the children often feel unheard and hurt because their feelings are trampled upon. Nobody really cares about them. So lots of hurt feelings. And because a lot of punishment and coercive control is involved, children tend to be intimidated. They have low self-confidence, low self-esteem, and don't know how to express themselves because they were never given a voice, right? The next one being authoritative, which is high on demandingness. The demands and expectations for behavior are high. However, it's high in connection and attunement. So you care about the child and their feelings. You consider their point of view. You listen to them. That child is treated as a person and you're emotionally available. You ask for their opinion. You talk to them. So you see the difference? High demandingness for authoritarian, but low connection. But authoritative has high demandingness and high connection. So it's the authoritative style that people tend to call gentle parenting. I don't like that term very much because it's not timid, which is what people think about when they say gentle. The idea that comes into somebody's head is of a parent that's saying, please, Bobby, please behave. No. Gentle parenting is saying that you're not treating that person harshly, but you're very high on expectations and you're checking them, right? So when I'm checking my teenager who's acting out, I'm not like, hey, Nathan, easy, Nathan. I'm like, hello, since when? From where to where? Or I like to ask questions a lot. Tell me a little bit about your thinking, because I'm a little bit confused. Or is there something going on that I don't know about that will make this choice okay? Because the expectations are high. You will behave yourself. You will act right. I'm just not going to harm you in the process of doing that, right? Because you're a person and I honor your feelings, but I'm checking you. Expectations for authoritative parenting are high. Boundaries are clear and firm, right? We're very on it, right? So when people hear gentle parenting, often they conflate it with permissive, which is the other side where expectations are low, but connection is high. So you're big on feelings, you talk about feelings, but you just let things slide because you don't want to, you want to avoid conflict. So those kind of children are held to a high standard of behavior. So those are the children where they will slap their mom and they'll say, Bobby, don't slap mommy. In authoritative parenting, nobody's slapping anybody. And if it does happen, because look, it's a child's job to move on. And it's your job to let them know we don't do that here. So if it happens, you look that child dead in the face. If they're a little child that you have to hold their hand or block that behavior, you hold the hand. You look at the child and say, our hands are for helping and not for hurting. We don't hit. Like you caught it, like you nip it in the bud, right? So that's what people think gentle parenting is permissive, where children are allowed to run wild. Gentle parent is authoritative. You're the boss, you're in charge, right? You just don't treat them like crap because you're trying to parent, right? So that's the permissive, low demandingness, but high in attunement and connection. Then there's the all the way one everybody wants to stay away from, including people who don't want to hurt their children's feelings, is neglectful, right? Where it's low in connection and low in demandingness. So no expectations for behavior, and the parents are also emotionally distant. That one is actually neglectful parenting, and I agree that that type of parenting should be discouraged, even punished, because that child isn't getting a chance, because they're going to go into delinquent behaviors. They're also going to have very low self-esteem because they're not connected to, anyone. So for parenting styles, it's just a general approach, and people use shift shaped into different styles from time to time, but it's just really key about attunement and demandingness. And the authoritative style, if I was going to create my own style and give it a name, I would call it collaborative parenting, because you're partnering with that child to raise them, because that child is a person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're helping to shape them into the adult that they're going to be. Like I usually tell my clients, your child isn't going to wake up at 18 done. You're cooking them, like you're literally raising them and shaping them every single day. So I need you to think about that 18-year-old and how you want them to be able to show up in the world. And I need you to start to show up in the world like that to them and treat them already like that, even though they're not there yet. Right? So that's why you talk to them respectfully. That's why you check them with respect. That's why even when you're mad at them, you demonstrate what appropriate responding looks like, which doesn't look like hitting them, which looks like saying, I am very, very upset with you right now. And so because I'm the boss of me, I am going to ask you to please leave and spend a few minutes thinking about what's going on. And I'm going to leave and go try to regulate myself. And when you're calm, you can come back and we can address this, because we're not having this. Not in this house, not here, not anywhere. We do not behave like this. And I don't know where you learned that that was okay, but absolutely not. Right? And you allow that child to reflect, and that child then comes back to you and says, I thought about it and I really messed up. And I'm like, absolutely, yes, you did. So because we cannot have that behavior continue, we need to punish the behavior. What's your punishment of choice? And they're like, but I don't like punishment. Exactly. You should have thought about that. When you chose the choice, you chose the consequence. I have one for you and I'm ready to give it to you. They're like, no, let me choose. But so we understand that consequences follow behavior, because if you choose to do it the hard way, like you literally saw the easy way, but you were like, no, I don't like easy. I like hard. Who am I not to honor your choice and respect the choice that you made? Like, I'm just following the lead, because when you were deciding that you didn't want to turn in your work, you were deciding that you didn't want to have a restful evening. So now you have to spend your evening doing the work and then doing extra work. Don't you like enjoying your life, my child? Why are you doing this hard way? Right? So high on expectations still, but I'm not hitting them because they didn't do their work. Because what does that do for me? Is that 18-year-old going to be more likely to do their work because they got hit? No, they're just going to learn that harm comes from this person who claims to love me. And so I better never get in trouble with them again. Do they have skills for life after? Those are the questions, and those are the things that influence the way we parent, the outcome, not really how we're feeling. Because if you parent based on how you feel,
I love that.
Test you.
You said a couple of things. Oh, sorry, Bilola.
No, I said I don't know if you guys saw me with my.
I saw you. You said a couple of things that I really liked. The first was how you're presenting it as a choice that has been made, right? Like you chose not to, do your work on time, or you chose not to do this. And now this is how we have to rectify that situation. But you also identified that you were dysregulated when something happens and you're like, I have to step away to regulate myself, which I think is important for kids to recognize that their behavior, impacts you emotionally, right? And just like they get dysregulated, you get dysregulated. So I really like that. So I'm just curious, what are some examples of the punishment choices?
Oh, okay. I like talking about punishment because when people hear punishment, they think beating or corporal punishment. But in the science of behavior, that's not what punishment means. Punishment is, I'm going to give you the textbook definition. Anything immediately following a behavior that reduces future likelihood of occurrence of that behavior. That's what a punisher is. And a reinforcer is anything immediately following a behavior that increases the future likelihood of occurrence of a behavior, right? So if a behavior occurs and you want to see more of it, you reinforce that behavior, which increases the future likelihood of occurrence of it. If something happens and you want to see less of it, you punish that behavior, which reduces future likelihood of occurrence. So to be clear, we don't punish people. We punish behavior, right? So I don't punish my children. My children are good. They're good inside. They're fundamentally good at their core. They arrived here good, right? However, they're going to make unhelpful choices from time to time. And if I want to see less of that, then I issue a consequence or allow the naturally occurring consequence to take its course, which reduces future likelihood of occurrence of that behavior. So once you lock that learning in, it changes the way you think about punishment. So punishment isn't the yelling or the screaming. All of that is your behavior in response to your big feelings. That's what the adult is doing. All of that yelling and screaming, that's you acting out and throwing a tantrum. Can you regulate yourself, ma'am and sir, and allow us to make progress? Because if a child is throwing a tantrum because they have, like, their upstairs brain is under construction, that your upstairs brain has finished completing, why are you throwing a tantrum in response to a child's tantrum? Who is the adult in the room, sir or ma? But here we are saying, look what you made me do. I've said I will not be beating you, but now you made me beat you. The question is, hello, sir, and hello, ma. They made you do it? You're telling me that child is the boss of you? Wow. Tell me more. Tell me a little bit more. Because that's the child that you birthed, though. Like, you changed this child's diaper. You wipe poop off their behind. They just got here. And they're the ones who are in the control center of your emotions. It's not adding up. It's not adding up. It's not adding up. Because if a child came to you and reported that the other child hit them, and you call them and say, what did you do? And they say, they made me do it. You would say, they didn't make you do anything. You're responsible for your response. Why, sir and ma, does that not apply to you?
I love that. I love that.
So we're excusing our lack of regulation, using the children's behavior to excuse it.
I love I had never thought of punishment that way, right? How you said you're punishing a behavior and not a person.
Absolutely.
That's really eye-opening.
So when something occurs, you look at that thing and you say, do I want to see more of this? Then you reward it. Do I want to see less of this? Then you punish it. The behavior, not the person. So for example, in real life, a ticket is a punisher. You're speeding. You run a red light. We don't like your behavior. So we put something following it that reduces future likelihood of occurrence of the behavior. That's a punisher, right? You're following the law. You're doing the right thing. Then you get a reward. Employee of the year. You're doing something right. So they put something as a consequence of that behavior to increase future likelihood of occurrence of the behavior. So you reward and you punish. So there are different types of punishers. There are different types of reinforcers. But just think about it as simply, if it's a behavior you want to see less of, you punish it. If it's a behavior you want to see more of, you reward it. There's positive punishment and negative punishments. Positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Do you want us to go into that, or should we keep it moving? We've turned this a whole behavioral science class.
Oh no, let's go in.
Let's do it. Okay, yes. So when you think of positive, that means you add, right? And when you think of negative, that means you remove. So if something is a punisher, that means that you want that behavior to reduce. So a positive punisher or positive punishment is adding something to reduce future likelihood of occurrence, right? A negative punisher is removing something to reduce future likelihood of occurrence. Real life example, they can give you a ticket. So they added something to reduce future likelihood of occurrence, or they can withdraw your license. They took something away, right? So just plus or minus, you add or you remove, right? So for example, positive punishment for a child in like a real world example is, we're not going to use physical punishment because we don't absolutely need it, right? Parents use punishers because it's reinforcing for them. That's a whole other conversation. But physical punishment is instant in the way it reduces problem behavior. That's why people think it works. However, it doesn't teach replacement behavior. It does not. And discipline means to teach. Discipline is from the word disciple. So that's your apprentice, that's your learner. It's your job to teach them how to do this humaning thing. And you have looked at them and said, why didn't you come pre-installed with all the things you need to be a human being? I'm going to beat you. That child isn't learning anything because when they're faced with the situation again, they don't have the skills in their repertoire. So why did you beat them? A child wets the bed and you beat them. What have you done? What have you achieved? Felt good about yourself because you flexed your power. That's all. That's all. How does it reduce future likelihood of occurrence? That child is going to be scared, making it more likely that they're going to wet the bed. Like, what are we doing? Just using our power anyhow. So there's nobody to check us. Let's come back home. So positive punishment you add to reduce future likelihood. Negative punishment you remove to reduce future likelihood. So if my child slings their tablet because they feel frustrated, I say, I'm going to put this tablet away because you don't know how to handle it. When you're calm, you can get it back later. And you just take the tablet and you put it on the fridge and you walk away. You just showed that child that they lose access to the tablet when they fling it, right? You just punished the behavior of flinging and that child makes that connection. Now, when I fling, tablet goes. Flinging as a behavior will reduce. That's how you punish behavior. The child is a good kid. So you say, look, I love you and I really want you to have this tablet. I bought it because of you. But when you fling, tablet goes, okay? So you put the tablet on the fridge and you just keep it moving. And the child can throw a tantrum and cry. Say, oh, sweetie, that feels really hurtful, right? That mommy took away the tablet. Exactly. When you made the choice to fling, you made the choice to lose. So what are you going to do next time? You say, I won't fling it, I promise. That's okay, but an hour has to be up, okay? Do you want to do something else now? Should we call on? Okay, let's call on. I love you. And you keep it moving. After an hour is up and you present the tablet, as that child's mind is telling that child that I'm going to fling it, that same mind will be saying you are going to lose it. Then that child is going to say, I'm not going to fling because I don't want to lose. You just shaped that child's behavior and you didn't destroy them or harm them in the process. If you feel frustrated about your child flinging, that it makes you hit them, you and that your child, you're in the same class. Because that child felt frustrated about Wi-Fi maybe not loading or a page not loading, and they flung. Child, frustration, fling. Mother, father, frustration, fling hand at child. Where did the child learn that when you feel frustrated, you fling things and people? Oh, but you can fling. But your child, your apprentice who just got here, cannot fling. So what
I'm getting is holding yourself to a higher standard, right?
A very high standard of behavior. Discipline requires the discipline of the adult first. That's who needs discipline. We're just using the children as excuse for our dysregulation. Because when we're upset, hungry, that's a combination of hungry and angry together, or we're fighting with our lover, or we have a bad day at work, we're so dysregulated, we're displaying the anger on the children. But when we're feeling good, our bills are paid, there's money in the pocket, money in the bank, we just won the lottery, the child flings, and we're like, don't do that next time, okay? Right? So it means that we're parenting from our feelings and we're not regulated, right? But if you hold yourself to a high standard of behavior, which, for example, non-violence is one of my core values, and it's a shared family value that we all have in this house, which means my children are not allowed to put their hands on people. And I am not allowed to put my hands on people either, including the children, because our hands are for helping and not for hurting. The inability to resolve tension without using our hands is a reflection of the lack of discipline of the person, child or adult. So except if you want your child to be running around in the world, hitting people who evoke the feeling of frustration in them. Why are you hitting people? Because they evoke the feeling of frustration in you. It's not a standard that you will hold the child to. So why are your own standards lower for the child? The child didn't make you do it. You just don't know how to emotionally regulate. Thankfully, my life's work to teach people how to regulate their emotions so that they show up in the world more as themselves and somebody that they can be proud of. You need that one first before you can teach your child how to regulate. So it's not your child that's making you run amok. It's the learning gap that you yourself need to close, right? So we're talking about positive and negative punishment. It goes the same way for increasing future likelihood of occurrence of behavior. So if you want a behavior to increase, you add something to it, right? If you want a behavior to increase, you remove something from it. Should we use a child or adult example? Choose and I'll tell you.
Child.
That also
I was taking notes.
So if you just said, tell me a behavior that you want to increase in your child.
What's a behavior
that you would like to see more?
Organization.
Very good. You want your child to be more organized. Let me give you a story, a real life story. So there was a time where we will get back from school and somebody's bag will be over there, somebody's shoes will be over there. So when you feel that frustration, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, why is this pissing me off and what do I want? I want my children to be more organized. Their behavior is demonstrating to you a skills deficit. That is your job to close because you're a teacher, right? So I need to teach these children to be more organized, right? So you then say, what is the behavior I would like to see? Children's brains don't understand organization. You're just speaking big English. You need to be very, very clear. I need bags on the hook and shoes in the corner. It's as simple as that. All that big English that you're speaking, their brains are tuned out. So you need to be able to operationally define what you're looking for. So you can't say to children, I just want you to be good. What does that mean? I need you to use your indoor quiet voice. Do you see how that operationally defines it? The child understands what you mean. You go into a store, your children are touching everything. It used to be so bad that I could not go out of the house. After I picked my children up from daycare, my husband was working in Nigeria at the time, so it was just me. I picked up my children from daycare on Friday. But inside the house still, we go to ballet and soccer on Saturday morning, come back inside the house. We don't go to store, we don't go anywhere. Sunday, we go to church, we come back inside the house until Monday. So everything that had to do with grocery shopping or anything that involved going to the store, going anywhere, I did when they were at daycare or school. Because everybody was out of control. Then I started to learn behavior science. So I said, when we're in the store, they're touching things. So as we're going into some, like, hey guys, we're going to have a good time at the store, right? And we are going to keep our hands to ourselves. That's the positive operational definition of don't touch things, right? So we're keeping our hands to ourselves. And if we do a good job of keeping our hands to ourselves, because I know it can be so hard to keep your hands to yourself in the store because they put all the things that they want children to touch at the eye level of the children. The store is set up for the children to fail at keeping their hands to themselves. So they're up against a lot of obstacles. So I said, here's what we're going to do. You know how I don't like buying treats at checkout, but we have been practicing keeping our hands to ourselves. And if everybody's able to keep their hands to themselves at checkout, I'm going to let each person pick out a treat and we're going to have a good time. Behavior that we want to increase, keeping hands to self, we reward it, positive reinforcement. Behavior that we want to reduce, touching things, we punish it, lack of treats at the end of the store. So we go into the store and I'm like, look at you. Good job. We've done 10 whole minutes. And they're feeling proud of themselves. Their mind and brain and body want to touch everything. Right? But they're saying to themselves, when I make the choice to keep my hand to myself, I make the choice to end the treats at the end of the shopping. If one person's hand wants to mistakenly, the other one will be saying, yeah, we're keeping our hands to ourselves. Okay, Mom, look at David. David wants I'm like, you guys are doing an amazing job because you have to put that skill in their repertoire first. The absence of that skill is a learning gap that the teacher, the parent needs to fill, right? So we then make it through the store and then we buy the treat. So we've established that that's possible. We no longer have to do it now. We established that when they were little. So now we're in the store. In fact, nowadays, we go to the store, the list is in the app on everybody's phone. I'm sitting down in the car. I'm like, don't call me. Whatever you see on the list, store brand, whatever, make the choice. Just buy everything and come back. My only job now is because none of them can drive, to drive them to the store. I'm teaching skills so that I can remove myself from all the unnecessary tasks that are possible. So to come back home, I digressed quite a bit. We're using the example of rewarding organizing, right? So we operationally define what that means. When they were little, it was bags on the hook, shoes in the corner, because they would throw their bags and shoes everywhere. So I use something called a group contingency, which simply means that you look at the whole group and you don't isolate that one person who is doing the wrong thing. So as soon as they all came in, two people put their bags on the hook. One person put their bag on the floor. What does your natural brain, who does your brain naturally want to talk to out of those three children?
The one who left the bag on the floor.
You look at the people who are doing the right thing and say, I really like how you took your time and put your bags on the hook. You've been paying attention, and I really appreciate it. Go bring the treasure box. You can pick out something from the treasure box. I did not talk to the offender. I didn't say pin like our Nigerian people usually say. And they went to bring the treasure box. They opened it, and the offender went to pick their bag up by themselves. Went to put it. I said, I put my bag on. And those that who brought the treasure box, they picked out. Then I said, can't I take something from the? I'm like, sweetie, tomorrow is another day. I know you tried and you probably forgot, and it's okay. It's been a long day. You were excited to get home, right? I totally get it. But when you made the choice to put your bag on the floor, you made the choice not to get candy. And I love you. And that's why we're going to try again tomorrow, even though candy is only once a week. And they were like, but that's not fair. I said, I know. But mom just got tired of talking about the same thing over and over again, right? And you can't do it, right? So we'll try tomorrow. Hug. I don't like it. I want my own candy. What kind of mom would I be if I give you candy for putting your bag on the floor, right? You know I can't do that. I love you. And we put treasure box back. Tomorrow, who came in first and put their bag on the hook? So you use positive reinforcement to increase future likelihood of occurrence of the behavior. People say, but isn't that a bribe? The fundamental difference between a bribe and a reinforcer. A bribe happens before the behavior. I will give you this candy, so you put your bag on the hook. A reinforcer happens after the behavior. Your paycheck is a reinforcer. You work, they give you your paycheck as a reward for the work that you have done. That's how reinforcement works. It increases future likelihood that you will come to work next week, right? That's how it works, right? But a bribe says, take this money, right? Then do the work. Also, difference between reinforcer and a bribe benefits the bribe giver, not necessarily the receiver. So that's why government contractors, give bribes to the, the staff of like the ministry and whatever, impoverishing the populace. Positive reinforcement builds skills in the kid and doesn't impoverish them, right? So if you now want to use negative reinforcement, which is you remove something to increase future likelihood of occurrence. So if your child is learning to be organized and you come home and you see that without you saying anything, they organize the whole place and you're like, oh, wow, you know what? I'm going to do all your chores tomorrow for taking initiative. You have removed something aversive and increased the future likelihood of occurrence of the appropriate behavior that you want to see. In closing, in speaking about this behavior, positive and negative, I want you to remember this. The relationship between appropriate behavior and inappropriate behavior is that they're inversely correlated, which means that as one goes up, the other one goes down, right? So usually when a parent comes to me in my practice and says, I need my child to stop doing this, after I've validated the parent's feelings and helped them, feel better, I ask them to describe to me the positive opposite of that behavior, because people rarely come to talk about appropriate behavior. They're talking about inappropriate behaviors. So for example, Bilola will say, my daughter is too scattered. So when I ask her to say, what is the positive opposite of the behavior? Like she rightly and accurately said, is I want her to be more organized. Then I move her towards describing it in practical operational terms. They say backpack up, clothes folded in closet, shoes in shoe hanger or whatever, right? The positive opposite of the mess is the organization. As one goes up, the other automatically goes down. So what you want to do is find the positive opposite so that you can teach first, because if that skill isn't in the child's repertoire and you punish, they're not going to be able to do it next time because they don't have the skill yet. So before you punish, you have to teach. After you have taught and taught and taught and they have refused to learn, that's when you need a consequence. But a consequence can't be the first thing, because the skill has to exist in the learner's repertoire, right? So you teach the skill, you clarify, this is what, so for example, there's something in my house called island clay, and a stranger might not understand what it means, but it just means that if you are on dish duty, when you are done, the kitchen island needs to be clear. Is island clear enough for everybody to understand? That's the operational definition of put all the junk or the rubbish in this island away. So if you look at our chore list in this house, the person who is on dishes has dishes, island, clear, stove. It's very operationally defined, which means there's no dishes in my sink. The island is clear and the stove is clean. Everybody understands that it's clear. Not, this house is too dirty. I'm going to beat all of you because the house is dirty. Does the skill to give me an empty sink, island clear, and clear stove exist in their repertoire? I've been teaching it for years, right? So once you've established the positive opposite, you teach it. After it is taught, then you now reward it. You reward the occurrence of it, which makes it likely to go up, which makes the problem behavior that you came to me with. What does that do to that problem behavior? It goes where?
Down.
It goes where? It goes down.
Away goes down.
But we front load because that's what's stressing our lives out with the problem behavior. These children just run away. Once we get into the parking lot and we get out of the car, the children just take off. Then you're screaming and snatching them and beating them in the parking lot. Hello, your child is supposed to run in the parking lot. Their brain wants to explore the world and take the world in. It's inbuilt into them. You have to teach them how to be safe. So, for example, you have to know the positive opposite, because when you yell at a child who's about to be in danger, you cannot be putting the problem behavior in what you're saying, because that's all that the child is hearing. So you don't say, stop running, stop running. You say, walk, short, direct, clear, positive opposite of the behavior. So if your child is so you make a plan to teach, you tell the child, I'm going to set you down. I'm going to need you to hold mommy. I'm going to set you down and I'm going to need you to hold the cat. I'm going to set you down and I'm going to need you to walk. Very clear. When you walk, when you make the choice to walk, then I'm going to take you to the park after so you can run. You put a reinforcer after. That child needs to learn that when I do this, then I get that. If that child takes off, immediately, yes, you feel frustrated, but immediately you tell yourself, this child has just demonstrated a deficit, a skills gap, still needs more, or maybe they're just not ready. So you put the leash back on. I used to have one of those when my children were little, because it's not me that you're going to come and put in trouble in this country. But they don't like the leash. So we can say, I know you don't like the leash. I want to take the leash off, but I'm worried about your safety. So when we go to the store tomorrow, I will remove the leash, but you have to hold mommy's hand. If you leave mommy's hand, leash comes back on. That child will make the connection between leash and behavior, right? So I'm using a lot of examples because I want to make this as practical as possible, but that's how it works. So you say the positive opposite. You say walk. You say indoor quiet voice. You say homework turned in on time, right? You describe the positive opposite of what you want to see. You teach it, then you reward it more effective than just all that screaming up and down that we were doing, because that just makes us aversive. We have now become the punisher because the child sees us and is like, which doesn't improve behavior in any way. So yeah.
I'm going to listen to this episode next week, like I wasn't here in the recording. Because there's just so much. I feel like I've been in like a really trying time of parenting where I'm not sure what I'm doing anymore.
Look, I told you, once you hack one level, these children are going to bring a new one, because they don't want us feeling too confident. If you feel too confident, then maybe they're not doing something right as children. So they're going to bring a new one. Somebody said, what's the hardest season of parenting? I said, the hardest one that you had before the next one that you are going to have. Because you're about to come up.
Yes.
They will just bring a new one. You will just be like, and I thought we were over it.
I said that to somebody recently, where I think maybe they had a newborn or a toddler, and they said it doesn't get better. I said, just enjoy the one you're in, because for every season, there's always something that's going to come with its own challenges, and you're just going to be looking. But something that I wanted to ask. So when my daughter was in kindergarten, her teacher said they were learning how to read. And the teacher discouraged telling the kids, I'm proud of you. He said, when you say I'm proud of you, you're making it about you, and you're teaching them that they should do things because they want that. Like, a reinforcer from you. But
Mm-hmm.
so he's encouraged me. He suggested to say things like, hey, how did you do? How does that make you feel? How much effort, like, how do you feel about getting this score? What do you think you can do better? And every time I share that, people have like mixed feelings and mixed opinions because they really want to tell their kids, you know, I'm proud of you. But a big fear I have is like raising a child who's a people pleaser and
Mm-hmm.
seeking external validation. So, what are your thoughts
Mm-hmm.
on that?
That's a really good one. And I think it's one of those areas where each approach has pros and cons. That's why, like I said, I like to be respectful of whatever approach each person is using. So when somebody tells me something new, before I knock it, I'm like, tell me a little bit about why that's helpful. So I can pick up the lesson and throw away the rest. And if the lesson doesn't apply to me, chop the whole thing, which is how I encourage people to listen to me as well. As you are listening to me, if what I'm saying is sounding like rubbish in your ears, please chuck it. Because the same skepticism I encourage people to have is the one I had because I was in that class and they were saying positive reinforcement. I was like, what rubbish is this one saying? Be skeptical. Chop what doesn't apply and review what you learned for what applies to your life. It really is that simple. So if somebody comes to me and says that, I'm going to first be curious about the thinking behind it. When my children was younger, we had a house guest and they said, why are you letting your children watch SpongeBob SquarePants? It's bad for children. I was like, really? Tell me a little bit about why. And they're like, I don't know. They just said it somewhere. I was like, well, I mean, I don't understand the thinking behind it. So we're going to keep watching SpongeBob SquarePants until I learn, about it. So it seems to me like that teacher's reasoning was solid, that when you say, I am proud of you, you're making your child's achievement about yourself, right? And so I can then see the logic in helping that child make the achievements about themselves. Then we can adapt it and apply it if it fits into our life and situation. Let me give you an example of how that relates to me. My church does this very lovely program where at the end of every school year, they do an award night. And if you have straight A's and things like that, they give you like awards and things like that. And I do not participate. My children do not participate in that thing. And the simple reason for that is that the hardest worker in my house in terms of grit and determination and perseverance academically does not make straight A's. The person who makes straight A's in my house, zero work because the answer comes to their brain. That award ceremony rewards natural talent. It does not reward grit, perseverance, and determination. So I do not participate. Awards great. Yes, if everybody was making straight A's, maybe I wouldn't mind. But I reward hard work. I reward growth. I reward perseverance. So am I going to go out into the world and say, stop participating in award ceremonies? No, there's a thinking and a logic and a reason behind my choices. And that's what I encourage parents to do. Tell me a little bit about why you're choosing this. Tell me a little bit about why you're not choosing this. And tell me how that gets you to the future child that you want. Because I want you to use the parenting style that you feel confident in. It is when you now come and say, well, that's our culture. Or our pastor said that we should not, or our grandfather said, that's when me and you will have problems. Because tell me a little bit about the logic. If there's no logic to back it up, then what are we doing? And what if this thing has negative side effects? Why do we keep using it? So if somebody comes to me and says, there's nothing you can say, I'm going to continue to beat my children. I'm like, first of all, I cannot love your children more than you.
Yep.
I can't want better for your children than you want for yourself. That's why I don't tell people not to hit their kids. Because the first thing you also have to realize is that if parents don't have additional skills in their repertoire, they're going to continue to use the skills that they have. So before I punish the behavior, I have to teach it. But aren't you going to teach somebody who is willing to learn? The person you cannot teach is somebody who is sure that they're doing everything right. That is why in my work, and it is very intentional, I work with people who are determined to become the best version of themselves. I don't work with people who I have to convince to become the best version of yourself. If you are not ready to change because your life is going good, then you're not my ideal client. And there are lots of people like that, and I love it for them. I'm not interested in convincing you. When your eyes see the thing that makes the person want to change by yourself, You will tell yourself and say, this thing I'm doing is not working. I need a change. Then when you are determined, you will come and look for me and I will happily take your money.
You reminded me of like people who say, oh, my parents beat me and I turned out fine. And I'm always like, did you?
Did you really? Because
But
tell me
okay.
about your conflict resolution skills and tell me why a 4-year-old has you throwing a full-blown adult tantrum. You have a skills gap that you don't know how to close, right? So for a lot of people is until a specific life event happens. You know, maybe a child grabs a belt and looks them in the eye, you know, they're like, yeah, right? Because I mean, think about it. There's something in us that intrinsically resists harm. And if a person who has more power than you is harming you, something in you is going to resist. The children are vulnerable and they don't have the power or the capacity to resist harm. But I'm a mandatory reporter. If you're harming your child and you live in the same country as me, I'm going to call and I'm going to make a report. It's not a preference. It's not a moral preference. It's a legal requirement, right? So it is up to us as parents to do no harm, and using the fact that that's how we were raised as an excuse, it no longer cuts it because we learn better and we do better. Think about pharmacological interventions. They used to give children this particular antibiotic that will stain their teeth and make it brown. They no longer prescribe that antibiotic to children. As effective as it is, it has deleterious side effects, right? They used to force feed babies, right? From when they were little. People no longer do that because it leads to asphyxiation. So somebody will now come and say, well, my mother force-fed me and I'm going to force-feed my child. If that child dies, you're going to jail. So yes, there were benefits of old ways and yes, there were reasons. But when we know better, we do better. Why are we so resistant to doing better? Is it because we don't consider children to be people? Is it because we're unwilling to review our practices? Is it because we're so set in our ways, we're unwilling to learn new ways? Perhaps because admitting that we aren't doing such a great job requires a certain level of humility, or we're just resistant to, well, how can one Nigerian woman come and be telling me what to do? My friend, do whatever you want.
All of the above.
I'm not the one. Thank you. I'm not the one who has to live with the future outcome of your choices, except, of course, your child is going to interface with mine and, you know?
Yeah, but it really is all the above, because there are times I found situations where people are they cannot wrap their heads around the idea that children are people too. And so when I would suggest, like, hey, if your child is not comfortable around somebody, don't force them to hug them. You know, there has to be a reason. You can call them later and ask them. And they're like, why would they? Aren't you the parent? Shouldn't you know better? But I'm like, they're also a person with feelings. And if they can hug everybody and they come to this person and they're hesitant, there has to be a reason. They're not just, you know, even though children sometimes they're a little crazy.
Why do children do that? Let's explore that. Why do they do that crazy thing that they do?
Their brains are not fully formed.
They're chaotic.
I mean, think about it. Like, if you use the example of a building, right? Downstairs has bathroom, kitchen, essentials, right? That's the downstairs brain. The amygdala is somewhere here, right? That's the like policeman or security guard of the brain. This one so I'm holding my hand up because I'm realizing that, we're not going to have visual, right? So I'm holding my hand up. It's the hand model of the brain. There's a video in my community. You guys can put a link or whatever. I really explain it really well. In fact, I made it a 2-part video to explain it well. There's upstairs and downstairs brain. So this bottom, the brain stem, is like the part of the hand, right? That's the what we call the reptilian or lizard brain. It's the most like ancient circuit. Fight, flight, or freeze responses live there. Then there's the midbrain. So everything here is subcortical. That's what we call downstairs. This up, the top part of the hand, is the cortical region. That's where executive function is, our thinking brain, our decision-making brain, our delaying gratification for future benefit brain is upstairs. Downstairs is factory fitted. You have everything that you need because that's essential for living, right? Upstairs brain, the executive functioning suite, the cortical realm, prefrontal lobe that is right here between our forehead, between our eyes on our forehead, the cortex is developing until we're in our mid 20s, close to our late 30s. So in that building, that is your child's brain. Upstairs, sometimes no roof, no window, construction materials all over the place, right? And you're expecting it to be fully functioning. It is under construction. Who is the builder? You. You now took the building that you have been building. Think of it as Lego blocks, block on block every day with those interactions to say, what were you thinking? Or like my son said one time when I asked, I said, I'll be honest, I wasn't.
Hey.
Obviously. Obviously, because, I mean, come on, right? So you're building that every day. You're wiring the synapses, the neurons. This brain stuff fascinates me. You're wiring it and building it every single day with your daily interactions with them as you model appropriate behavior, as you control yourself, regulate yourself, and model what it's like to regulate yourself when you're activated or dysregulated. That's how you are building it. You now take your own hand. You now slap the construction you have been constructing. Now you have to start from building everything again. Like, so think about it. That child has deficit. Before I used to say that there's cotton wool in upstairs brain. It's not cotton wool because cotton wool is matter and occupies space. It is air, empty, vacuous space. And it's not a character flaw. They did not come into this world factory fitted with the skills that they need to do the human thing. If you start a job today and you didn't have training or skills and you got there and your manager smacked you for not knowing how to answer the phone, that manager will go to jail. We are smacking children for not coming factory fitted with skills that we believe that they should have. You at your big age, that your prefrontal cortex is fully developed, which is up for debate as evidenced by your behaviors. Facts. How are you behaving? And why are we holding children to a higher standard of behavior than adults? These are the questions.
Oof. I feel so enlightened. I mean, the children in my life, get ready. You're about to meet a new auntie. A new auntie is coming after today.
I love it. I love it for them and for you too, because you're going to show up in the world more and more as a person that you're proud of. And you're going to like yourself. That's why everybody needs to learn emotional self-regulation. It's like potty training. We come into the world, we feel, then we act. Your brain says, empty your bowels. We empty our bowels. And it's nice and cute because we have diapers, right? And we do that. But we get to a certain age, we then get potty trained by the adults in our lives who are potty trained, right? Then we start to feel. The feelings don't go away, but we think, then we act, right? So some of us didn't have any adults in our life to teach us to go from feeling to thinking to acting in our behaviors. Because once our downstairs brain says, slap them, we just slap them and now we've lost our job. We're literally making messes all over the place because our brain is not potty trained. But thankfully, there's adult education. Because while it may not be our fault, because nobody chose their family of origin, and the adults we have become is literally a reflection of what our upbringing was. So while it may not have been our choice, right, we're still on the hook for the outcome. We're still responsible for the outcome. So an adult who doesn't know how to regulate is constantly making choices they're not proud of, is constantly ending up with egg on their face, feeling ashamed of themselves, not liking the way they show up in the world. There's adult education, there's brain potty training, and that's my specialty. I literally teach people to go from emotionally dysregulated, where they're making choices at work, at home, in their relationships that they're not proud of, to learning how to regulate so that now when you feel like smacking your kid because they made a poor choice, you think, what's the most helpful behavior in this circumstance? Then you act, you take a deep breath and you say, I'm not thinking very good thoughts right now, so I'm going to ask you to leave. Just go. And then you face yourself, you're like, because children will push your buttons. They will evoke feelings that you did not know that you were capable of feeling. But the exact same way your child is not allowed to act inappropriately because they feel some type of way, you're not. So you regulate yourself. You connect your upstairs brain. So you use your whole brain, right? You connect it and you think, what is the best choice in this situation? And you make a choice that reduces future likelihood of occurrence of the behavior, that does not destroy the child while you're at it. By the time that child turns 18, imagine the emotionally intelligent, able to self-regulate, able to articulate themselves. That's the picture you have to keep in your mind when you're parenting today. Because you're not just parenting for today. You are collaborating with this human, this little human who had feelings and fears and concerns and emotions and frustrations just like you, collaborating with them to become the best version of themselves possible. It is hard, backbreaking work that will bring you to tears. I still cried 2 Sundays ago, barely 10 days ago. Drive you to your knees. If prayer is your thing, it will confuse you. Sometimes you ask yourself, what am I doing? But the outcome, you yourself, you will look at the children. Sometimes I look at my children and I'm like, wow, especially my oldest, because he was one that suffered when I didn't know all these things. Oh my God. I own it. I own it because I was a yelling, hitting parent. And I was quick with the smack on the backside of the head. Very fast with it. Highly dysregulated mother, right? And then I learned. And now the other day we were having a conversation and he said, here's what I think. I think that you and I have completely different perspectives about this. And I respect your opinion because I know there's solid thinking behind it. However, I have a different opinion. So you know what I think both of us should do? I think we should take a break now and maybe just maybe spend some time to think about it, maybe read up on it, and so that later we can come to a conversation. Because right now it seems like we're each getting agitated because we want our point to be heard and we're not listening to each other. He was 14 at the time. And I was
my goodness.
I was like, okay. That sounds like a really good plan. And I went into my room and I knelt down and I lifted my hands in thanks to God and said, the journey that you sent me that made me find this behavioral science and mental health counseling thing, I'm so grateful. Because that's how you want your child to show up in the world. Mm-hmm. Right? To be able to say, here's what I think. That is upstairs break. Look, as I first went and I not thought about it. I said, you mean this thing is possible? Like I'm literally living it. Do we have bad days? Absolutely. Because one day, one shenanigan, and once they shenan, they're going to shenan again. Right? Because they're growing. And so once they've locked in a level of learning, it's like getting to the next grade. They're going to bring a new thing that they haven't learned yet. They're going to expose a deficiency. And I, as the adult in the relationship who is charged with a responsibility I take very seriously, which is to raise emotionally intelligent, capable adults, would then say, okay, this one is more than my power. Where did that come from? And I'm like, sit down. Let's talk about this, because why is your teacher calling me about this? And they're like, I don't feel proud of myself the way I acted. I said, but here's the thing. This is the third time it's happening. So the first time we talked about it, second time we talked about it. Now we need to punish the behavior. So what's the consequence you are choosing? Because I'm just going to need this to not happen again. So they would choose the consequence. Maybe no screen time for, I'm like, no, the punishment needs to be related to the action. Let me tell you my favorite one. Reflective essay.
Ooh.
You are going to write. I will use that opportunity to check your spelling, check your punctuation, check your paragraphs. They hate it. But that's what punishment is. It's an aversive thing that you add to reduce future likelihood of occurrence. And the prompt is very simple. What happened, how we played out, what are the lessons we learned and that we're going to apply for how it's going to happen in future. So yeah, a child that just got in trouble in school and you're just basically is this out to rest. I hate it. I know you hate it and I hate it too. And I really don't want to be here because I don't want to have conversations about behavior. You're grown, you know how to handle yourself, but you have demonstrated with your behavior that you need additional help. So maybe spend the next couple of hours reflecting on your behavior, time that you should have spent playing your game. But when you chose the behavior, you chose the consequence, and you have to punish the behavior because we can't have it happening again. Then you go and write my essay for me, and I get really finicky about the punctuation and sentence structure because I know they hate it. And me too, that's not a good use of my time because I'm not an English teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we will sit down there, we will mark the essay, we will collect all the errors, you will rewrite your sentence structure and paragraph. I'll say a paragraph is 2 to 3 sentences that present a central idea. You will write, you will rewrite, you will correct, but you will describe the situation that happened. In school, a child said a wrong word to me and I overreacted. And because of that, I said, next time when somebody says something that is inappropriate to me, I will first calm myself down, decide if I want to involve an adult because I need that behavior to not happen again. And then I will respond appropriately. So they're not messaging my mom that your child was fighting. Say, my child was fighting. Non-violence is our core value. We don't put our hands on others. So where did that come from? I need that to not happen again. Did I ruin my child's self-esteem in the process? Did I curse at them? Did I treat them disrespectfully and poorly because they made a poor choice? Or did I treat them like a person, the way I would like to be treated, and put a consequence after their behavior, the way the police officer gave me a ticket? That since then, anytime I want to drive, I remember the lost hours of work, the $250 driving to that courthouse and all of that, and say, you know what, it's not worth it, then I'll slow down. Because like I tell them, do you think I want to speed? Yes. Is the desire to speed still there? Absolutely. What is making me control myself? Not wanting to get the consequence. So are you going to want to make poor choices? Yes. I tell them I didn't always do what my mom said. So I don't expect you to always want to do. In fact, if I give you an instruction, I fully expect you to find ways to get out of it. So, for example, if I give you screen time limits, you are so intelligent that you are going to be finding a way to get around those screen time limits. And I love it for you because you are smart and intelligent. But best believe I'm going to catch you. And when I catch you, there will now be a consequence. So I'm not saying don't try it. In fact, I double dare you to try it. Then I'm going to catch you. And when I catch you, you should have had screen time for 5 hours on Saturday. Now you have 0 hours. Now you have to write an essay. Now you cannot even have your phone. Now you cannot even enjoy your whole weekend. Was it worth it? That's collaborative parenting.
I love that.
This has been really amazing and engaging.
Yes.
And as always, we went. Are we almost there? I think, yeah.
Yeah, so let's do closing thoughts and the questions, whatever other questions that I can answer specifically.
Yeah.
I don't even think I have questions. I think that I have filled my toolbox. Now it's just for me to go practice and keep practicing and spreading the gospel because it benefits society as a whole for everybody to have wholesome kids who can self-regulate and who can stand up for themselves and show up in the world as the best version of themselves.
Right. So,
like I said, even though I was in here and I took notes, I am going to listen again next week. Like I never heard this before. And I think I'm also very excited because one of the reasons we reached out to you and we really wanted to do it this month was with the holidays coming up and families getting together. We think that it's like a really good topic and for people to be able to play this podcast with your families as a moment of reflection. People are setting goals for the new year.
Right.
There's so many gems in here where families can sit down together and work on the families that they want to be and how they want to show up better next year.
Agreed. Right. And I want to say that this topic was about raising children, right? But Coach G, she counsels individuals, couples, families, right? So it's not just, parenting, but that's what we're focusing on here. But on her website, untangledtogether.com, you can see that, she offers therapy and coaching services for, the couples, the singles, the mommies and the daddies. So definitely check that out. And then I just wanted to ask about one thing that I saw on your website, which was your virtual village. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
That's my passion project, because it has bothered me for a long time that a lot of people who need help with their mental and emotional health can't get it. Often because it's priced outside their budget, and it just is what it is. And I've thought a lot about how I could help. So I will do pro bono work, work with people. But then I realized that even with people who were paying, I couldn't help everyone, that I wanted to. So I said, okay, what are some ways? And I spent a lot of time thinking about this and, researching it and throwing a lot of money at the problem. What are some ways that I can take this expertise that I have, which I'm happy to share? I mean, I can talk about this in my sleep. It has been the past, hour and a half. And, I didn't even have to open a textbook. I know, the science of behavior, and I'm fascinated by it. And I want to help people apply it in practical ways to their lives today. So let me take all of this expertise, let me put it somewhere. So I'm recording videos of what we call a resource library on every topic. I recommend that people suggest topics as well. If there's something that you want to learn, I will take the science that I read in all of the books. You don't need 12 years of school. Like me, I'll break it down and explain it to you, and you can use it right now. So resource video. So if you think of my virtual village as a place everyone is welcome, you just have to apply to be let in. So you come to the resource library, and it really, really is a library, whatever topic that you want to learn. The plan is to drop a new video each week. And, just keep sharing the knowledge. So if there's something on parenting you want to learn, if it's about maybe collaborative communication in relationships, if it's a topic about mental health, I've been doing a series on emotions, how to label your feelings, emotional granularity, how to feel your feelings, whatever the topic is in this field that I'm really, good at, I will explain it. So it's in the resource library for free at no cost. And the plan is to always make it free, right? And then once a month, we host a live virtual workshop where we choose once we put so for example, the next one is on the 6th of January. There will always be an upcoming live workshop in the virtual village. You go RSVP if you have a topic you want to learn about. So for example, today on Twitter, people were asking about contempt, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse from John Gottman's work on relationships. The 4 horsemen are contempt, criticism, stonewalling, and defensiveness. I can explain that stuff. I'm trained in that as well. People wanted to learn more about it. So you just go and suggest the topic that you will like. The day before the live, we'll choose the topic that has that's most frequently occurring. And that's the topic that we will do in the free live workshops. So for 90 minutes once a month, I will show up and teach people something for free at no cost, right? And so that's kind of like the way it's set up. We also have a village square where if you have questions, you can ask and the community can, get together to answer. So if the purpose is really simple. Give people community, access to my expertise and resources at no cost to them. That's my passion and that's my way of helping, because not everybody is going to be able to afford one-on-one sessions. I'm also doing courses because some of these things are more than we can cover in the virtual village. So simplifying the science in an applicable format. So for example, I have created a 7-step proprietary system for emotional regulation that I can teach anyone. So I'll put that in a course, and for a course that is less expensive than working with me one-on-one. You can do a self-paced version of the course, or I can teach it as a group or a cohort. Sometimes organizations invite me to come and teach emotional regulation. So maybe to their managers. I work with some companies, to help them with emotional regulation in the workplace. I can bring my expertise there. Churches invite me as well. My passion is to use this expertise that I have to help people improve their lives, right? And so I do it in that format that's free and accessible. And then there's also the paid format. So that's it really.
Your passion definitely came through. I mean, I can feel it. And yeah, for our listeners, again, that's untangledtogether.com. We'll link it in the show notes and your social media. I'm not on X, or the app formerly known as Twitter, but we can put your handle on that too. But
yes,
you are on
we're
Instagram.
On yeah, well, I'm Tangled Together on Instagram and on Twitter as well. Like, so we have like official. I work with a whole team that helps me, because left to me, it's a lot of work. But I have like a team who helps me, because I genuinely, let me tell you one very honest and vulnerable truth, is that I moved to this country just before my 31st birthday. As a grown adult, I already had a kid and I had another baby on the way. And I was a grown adult who did not know a lot of the things that I know now. And I made a ton of mistakes, right? But I got the opportunity to learn these things, and learning them changed my life. If I can learn these things, I genuinely believe anyone else can learn. I'm a firm believer in the capacity of humans to course correct and design the life of their dreams. There was a year that one of my goals, because at the end of every year, I set goals for the next year. One of my goals was to stop shouting at my children, because I didn't like it. I hated it. I didn't like who I was when I was mean, but the mean me was always showing up. So I've gone from that person who it was once a dream that I would stop shouting at my kids, that a couple of weeks ago in youth church, somebody was trying to make a point. One of the aunties who was teaching the children was trying to make a point and said, look, mom shouts. Who here can say their mother doesn't shout at them? And my daughter raised her hand.
Okay.
And they were like, wait, what? Your mother doesn't shout at you? Then the auntie was like, well, my mother shouted at me and I shout at my children. And it was my friend who volunteers in youth church who came to find me after I said, Gbemi, this emotional regulation thing you're always saying is really true. That if you were there, I would have said maybe she was performing for the audience, but you weren't. And in real life, your children are able to show up. I really want to be like you. You should teach us this thing. That's why I'm trying to teach it to people that I know, because if it can change my life, it can for everyone. And I really want that for my people. So this is me genuinely saying I have been that person who was dysregulated and all over the place. And learning has transformed my life. I'm not perfect. And you remember what I said in the beginning, I think when we were still chatting about once you brag on something, that then you're about to yeah. Guess who then yelled like about a week ago? I did. And I didn't like how I felt. And then I called my daughter and I said, I wanted to check in with you about that. I'm sorry I shouldn't have yelled, but I felt really frustrated because I had told you 3 times to vacuum this living room. And each time you were like, sure thing, I'm on it, sure thing, I'm on it. And you didn't. And I felt like you weren't taking me seriously. And that's why I yelled. I said, I'm sorry I made you. I said, you didn't make me do anything. My behavior, I'm responsible for my response. But I found it incredibly frustrating because now when I raised my voice, then you went and vacuumed immediately, which makes it more likely that I'm going to raise my voice next time. And I hate that for us. So we're not perfect. Nobody's saying that you're going to be a perfect parent. I am not. Look, knock on wood. I'm trying my best, but I'm human and I will make mistakes. When I make a mistake, I focus on repair. I own my mistake and then I try to repair because that's the biggest thing in our connection with our children. When we repair, it increases and strengthens the bond. And because they can see that you're vulnerable, it builds empathy in them. So it's okay for our children to watch us struggle and fail. That's why I like the idea of collaborative parenting, because it's both you and the child, right? So you will make mistakes. They will watch you take ownership of your mistakes and not beat yourself up and apologize. Then they will learn to be like that as well. And you will influence them and they will influence you. That's what it's like. So I'm not talking about perfection. I'm saying as flawed and as imperfect as we are, we really can raise children without ruining them. I genuinely believe that we can, because it happened for me. And I really want to share that expertise with, all who care to listen. I'm going to stop talking now because this has been so much fun.
It has
gone so fast.
Thank you so much. Our listeners, if you are enjoying this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and review us wherever you're listening. Follow us on Instagram at @2bspod. And until next time,
bad bush, no before true, bad pikin.
Meaning, as bad as the child is, the parent cannot throw the child away.
Oh, wow.
right?
I love that. Can I steal it?
Yes.
My own sign off is you deserve every good thing.
I claim it.
Amen.